Hello everyone, today is 18th of May, Saturday, so happy weekend to all of you. Now it's 12:30 in middle of the day by Moscow time. I'm Levan Gudadze and this is my first update for the day, in which I'll share all the main news that are making headlines in Russian media outlets and Russian language pages on different internet platforms. And there are quite a few very significant developments and news that I'd like to share with you for this moment. Although before I start, let me make some major, I will say, an announcement about this project of mine, this small media project of mine. And hopefully you will take this announcement with your understanding. Point is that, well, from now on, I will divide my updates in two parts. First part will be available on my YouTube and Rumble channels, and the second part will be available on my Patreon page. This way, I hope I will generate additional interest towards my Patreon page. I will have updates there on daily basis, and hopefully I will have if it works, and if I will have more subscribers on Patreon, it will give me opportunity to further develop this project, because I constantly see these requests. Some people want to see videos from cities from the Golden Ring around Moscow. Some people want more videos, more walk and talk style videos from Moscow. Some members of our community want something else, and I'm alone working on this project, by the way. I don't have a opportunity right now, financially speaking, to hire staff and to pay wages. I just not in that position, and alone I'm doing as much as I can. I'm working on these channels on YouTube and Rumble. I'm making programs for Patreon. I'm updating my Telegram channel on daily basis. Only so much time is in a day. So this is the announcement, by the way. From now on, I will divide my updates in two parts. First half, about 30-35 minutes, will be on YouTube and Rumble, and the second part of update on my Patreon page. If you like this channel, if you want to support my work, you can subscribe to Patreon, and you will have access not just to the second parts of the news updates, but also to some additional content, additional extra content that I'm creating for Patreon community as much as I can. So yes, this is the announcement. Once again, hopefully you will receive this announcement with your understanding, because after all, I spend all day, every day, working for this project to prepare programs and record and upload, and to make extra content for Patreon, and also to update Telegram. And I have obligations towards my family, and when there is days like yesterday, for example, when I did not have even single donation, I spent all day working for this project, and not even $1 donation. And there is, so many days like that every single month that, it does makes you question what you are doing. And we all are humans, isn't it? We all have obligations. We all need our ends to meet. And when I see demands same time, or requests, let's say that, maybe I can do this and maybe I can do that. Come on, man. Just to go in Moscow and come back, it's $25 just to go and come back. I would like to do videos from Moscow like every other day, but it's not free, isn't it? So anyways, I mean, enough talk. So yes, that's what I'm gonna do, man. If it works, it works. If not, then well, maybe I'm really doing something that I should stop doing. Maybe I should start looking for normal day job. Maybe that's the answer. I don't know. In any ways, I really hope number of paid subscribers on Patreon will increase. So, and that will give me opportunity to continue this work, because I love to work with the news, by the way. I love to do this. But if it don't work for me, then I mean, what is the point, really? Anyways, that's been said, let's talk about news now. Well, first of all, short summary of the situation on Ukrainian battlefield. Of course, main area of the activities are on the northern parts of Kharkiv region, where Russian forces for about a week now are conducting local-scale offensive operations to create a buffer zone. And there is two main directions of the Russian offensive, this local-scale offensive: northern flank and the eastern flank. In the northern flank, Russian forces are on the outskirts of the Liptsy settlement. At this point, this settlement definitely has some strategic meaning, and most likely next week Russian forces will start offensive operations inside the Liptsy itself, although some sources are reporting that Russian forces already are conducting operations inside the Liptsy, but I think it's a too early call. Russian forces are on outskirts of the Liptsy for now, as far as I understand, according to reports, majority of the reports that I see in Russian segment of internet. When it comes to eastern flank of Russian offensive, main hotspot right now is of course Volchansk city, and Russian forces continuing advances in the northern part of this town, which is divided by Volchan river. And despite the deployment of additional reinforcements by Kiev regime, at this point at least, Kiev regime forces are unable to stop Russian advances in the northern part of this town, and the military experts are expecting that in next couple of days Russian forces most likely will finish clearing operation in the northern part of Volchansk, and the operations will begin in the southern part. And in this regard, I will share with you information that some channels are reporting today that Russian forces establish control over this settlement on the eastern part of Volchansk, Zibina. And if information is correct, if Russian forces establish control over the Zibina, it definitely gives Russian militaries opportunity to conduct further offensive operations towards Volchansky Khutara and Tikhaya, and after establishing control over this settlement, which is located on the southern part of this Volcha river, then road will be open basically to conduct offensive operations towards southern part of Volchansk city itself. So I guess that's main direction of the Russian operations at this point when it comes to this eastern part of the settlement. Although about an hour ago I did watch today's update from Military Summary, and Dima, host of Military Summary channel, said that once Russian forces will establish control over the Zibina, he did not say that Zibina is under Russian control already, but some sources are reporting that it is. Then Dima thinks Russian forces will conduct offensives not just towards Verkhny Khutara and Volchansk, but also eastwards to establish control over all these settlements: Brukovo, Chaykovo, Okhrimovka, Malaya, Volchir, Varvarovka, and and the rest of it, until Russian border in this area. So it is possibility clearly. So that's when it comes to this northern part of the Kharkov region. Of course, Russian forces actively using drones in this area, are dominating basically area with the drones, and in recent days there were so many dozens and dozens of videos of destruction of military equipment of Kiev regime that was deployed towards Lipsy and Volchansk direction. Tanks, infantry fighting vehicles, transports, and so on. Also, by the way, more indicators that Russian forces are preparing similar type of local scale offensive operations to create a buffer zone in Sumy region. It was predicted, I was predicting this, many other channels were predicting that it is possible that we will see a Russian offensive in Sumy direction, and most likely that's what is going to happen. It will further increase, of course, pressure on Kiev regime forces and further stretch Kiev regime forces, and at some point in the future Kiev regime force is gonna snap and start collapsing. I mean, like domino effect on every single sector of the front line. And that's also one of the goals, I believe, of this Russian offensive on the northern part of Kharkov region, to create a buffer zone and same time to increase pressure on Kiev regime forces. When it comes to other sectors of the front line, in Chisovyar direction, Russian forces continue their bombing campaign and strikes on points of concentration of the Kiev regime in Canal district of the Chisovyar, also in main part of the city. As you can see on this map, Canal district is separated from the rest of the Chisovyar by this irrigation channel, and reports are coming in that some units of Russian armed forces conducting reckoning force operations already inside this Canal district. Although we are not yet talking about some major offensive on this micro district, Chisovyar is, Russian side can use Chisovyar as a sort of trap for Kiev regime forces for another couple of weeks at least, or maybe even longer than that, maybe even months or two, like it was done with Bakhmut or Avdiivka. Also, by the way, when it comes to this northern flank of Donetsk sector of the front line, Russian forces continuing pressure on Kiev regime units in Klishchevka area, and highly likely that in next several days this settlement will become under full Russian control. Then Russian forces will focus on Andreevka, and eventually, maybe even before end of this month, Kiev regime forces will have no other option but to retreat from these areas and try to establish new defense lines on the right bank of this irrigation channel that goes from Kurdyumovka area up to Chisovyar and then northwards. Also, by the way, when it comes to Avdiivka sector of the front line, at this point main activities are happening in Nitailova, Umansk directions. Both settlements are under Russian control. Some sources are saying that just 90% of the settlements are under Russian control, but I think it's both settlements are basically under Russian control. Maybe some small pockets of resistance of Kiev regime forces somewhere in the western parts of these settlements, that makes no difference really on the battlefield. But in general, we clearly see some sort of operational pause in Avdiivka sector of the front line after continuous Russian offensive operations since the liberation of Avdiivka. Russian forces did not stop. Basically, they established control over the dozen of settlements in Avdiivka direction, and maybe it is time to slow down a little bit, receive some reinforcement, some additional weapons, munition, to conduct some rotations on a line of contact. And after that, I guess, first of all, Russian forces will start a new wave of offensive operations on the southern flank of Donetsk sector, Georgievka, Maximilianovka, Krasnogorovka, Nivelskaya areas, to basically establish control over these parts of the Donetsk sector, to secure basically a southern flank of Avdiivka sector, and then we might see further offensive operations on Avdiivka sector of the front line. When it comes to South Donetsk sector, no reports about some changes on the ground, but plenty of videos are circulating on internet these days about Russian artillery and airstrikes on Urozhaina, on Kiev region forces in Urozhaina Staromayorskaya direction, which clearly can be indicators that can be seen as indicators that Russian forces are about to start some serious offensive operation, not just recon force operation, but maybe a decisive offensive operations to establish control over both these settlements, Urozhaina and Staromayorskaya. And if my reading of the big picture is correct, I expect this to happen before end of next week. So, if I'm not mistaken in my understanding of the situation, maybe before end of next week, both these settlements, Urozhaina and Staromayorskaya on Vremyovsky salient area, will become under full Russian control. And this is it when it comes to short summary of the situation on Ukrainian battlefield. Once again, dear friends, if you are interested in more detailed analysis of the developments on the line of contact, I recommend military channels for that. They are providing much greater volume of information on daily basis. And if by chance you are not familiar with the alternative media, independent media, and including military channels, then under this video in description box you can see recommendation list of the channels that I follow, and there are at least several links to military channels. Okay, that's been said. Let me check how long is this update already. It's 17 minutes. So first half of the update that will be published on YouTube and Rumble will be about 30-35 minutes. I will try to keep it short, and the rest of the update, the second part of the update, will be available on my Patreon page. So let's continue. RT is reporting that President of Russian Federation Vladimir Putin reveals plans about Kharkov. Many of you probably are already familiar with this news, but I will go through this anyway. Russia has no intention of capturing the Ukrainian city of Kharkov, which is close to the Russian border. President Vladimir Putin has stated Moscow forces have been making notable gains in the area in recent days. Speaking to reporters at the Harbin Institute of Technology during his two-day visit to China, Putin commented on Russian operations in the Kharkov region, asserting that Moscow is achieving success on the battlefield by acting strictly according to plan. When asked about Russia's goals there, Putin noted that Ukraine is to blame for recent fighting in the area, as it unfortunately continues to shell residential blocks in the border areas, including Belgorod city. Civilians are dying out there. Everything is crystal clear. They are firing directly at the center of the city, the president said, recalling that he had publicly warned Kiev that Russia would be forced to establish a sanitary cordon in the areas under Kiev's control if attacks continued. This is what we are doing. As for the capture of the Kharkov, or liberation of the Kharkov, I will say, Putin stated that there are no such plans for today. This is important, of course, to highlight that he said that Russian armed forces today don't have such plans to conduct offensive operations towards Kharkov itself, which is correct. And if you remember, even before Russian forces started these local-scale offensive operations to create a buffer zone, there was rumors that were circulating in the internet that Russia is preparing some large-scale offensive operations in the Kharkov direction, and I was skeptical of it. I was saying that current strategy of active defense is working quite well for Russian side, and why would Moscow change this strategy right now when this strategy can be used longer and basically cause final collapse of the Kiev regime. And then, of course, in my understanding, it will make sense to conduct large-scale offensive operations when Kiev regime forces will really collapse all along the front line. At that point, of course, as a result of large-scale offensives, casualty numbers would be as minimal as possible, and also damage on the ground. And my understanding was that if we will see Russian operations in the northern part of Kharkov region, it will be just to, local-scale offensive to create some buffer zone. And that's exactly what is happening, and Putin basically said exactly the same. Let's continue. Zгляd newspaper is reporting that the President of Russian Federation commented on the topic of legitimacy of the Zelensky. I translated this news, to be more precise. So Russian President Vladimir Putin said that the question of the legitimacy of the Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky after May 20 will be important if any agreement need to be concluded. For us, this Zelensky's legitimacy after May 20 of course matters, because if it comes to signing some documents, of course we must sign documents in such a faithful area with legitimate authorities. This is an obvious fact. According to Russian leader, the source of today's power in Kiev is a coup d'etat. He also highlighted that, which is absolutely correct, factual. In 2014, Washington, Brussels, and other capitals of the collective West intervened in internal affairs of Kiev regime and supported this armed overthrowing of their legit government. So at the same time, the question of the legitimacy, according to Putin, must first of all be answered by the political and legal system of the Ukraine itself. Putin clarified that there are all sorts of options in the Ukrainian constitution. So, well, if I understand correctly, statement of Russian president, after 20 of May, Moscow will no longer see Zelensky as a legit president of Ukraine, although Ukrainian side has some means, legal means, to deal with this situation through the constitutional means, so that they can keep Zelensky as a legit president, or they can choose some other options. It's all up to Ukrainian side at this point. But if nothing is changed, then Moscow will not be able to see Zelensky as a legitimate president after 20 of May. That's my understanding of the statements of the Russian president. Also, by the way, interesting news that, well, according to RT, Washington Post published article that Russia already outperformed Ukraine's 2023 counteroffensive on this topic. So Russian forces have taken more territory in 6 weeks than Ukraine managed in 6 months last year. The Washington Post admitted on Friday, describing the 2023 effort by Kyiv as lackluster and disappointing. The spring counteroffensive was a war gamed by British and US generals in Germany, and the Kiev regime was supplied with 1,500 armored vehicles to conduct this operation. Kiev regime forces were trained by NATO, especially for this counteroffensive, and they transferred to Zelensky's regime Leopard tanks, Challenger tanks, Abrams tanks, Bradley infantry fighting vehicle, and SV-90s, and number of other Western military equipment. Once it finally began in June of 2023, it got stuck, this Ukrainian so-called counteroffensive, it got stuck in Russian defenses and resulted in a gains of only 199 square miles, which is 515 square kilometers approximately. worth of territory by December, according to the Washington Post. Russia has taken 553 square miles, or almost 1,500 square kilometers, so far this year alone, of which 294 square miles, or 761 square kilometers, just since the beginning of April, the US media outlet noted. Those numbers came from the Institute for the Study of War, a DC-based think tank run by Kimberly Kagan, sister-in-law of Victoria Nuland, the former US State Department official in charge of Ukraine. So, I mean, no one can say that these numbers that Washington Post is publishing are some, you know, from some pro-Russian source or that kind of stuff. No, it's from anti-Russian source, from this think tank that is run by sister-in-law of extreme Russophobe Victoria Nuland, and she's of course one of the individuals to be blamed for not only one, but definitely one of those individuals in the collective West that should be blamed for everything that happened to Ukraine and Ukrainian society since the 2014. We all remember this Victoria Nuland, how she was giving these cookies, isn't it, on Maidan in 2014, and encouraging this regime change, basically. Experts from the two other US think tanks told the Washington Post that the Russian advances in Kharkiv region might be part of strategy to press the Ukrainians everywhere and stretch their reserves, but not actually take Ukraine's second largest city, which is Kharkiv. And well, in this point, these think tanks basically are repeating what I was saying from the very beginning. I mean, it's, you don't have to be genius to understand that this was not a large-scale Russian offensive operations directed at Kharkiv. Of course, it was not. It was just to impose additional pressure on Kyiv regime forces, to stretch Kyiv regime forces, and to establish a buffer zone, and that's exactly what is happening. TASS news agency is reporting that, according to an article in Wall Street Journal, by the way, Ukraine is asking now Washington for permission to use US weapon systems, long-range weapon systems, to conduct strikes deep inside Russian territory. And this is not the first article in the Western media outlets that are, that are on this topic, that Kyiv regime has no permission from the West to use NATO Western weapon systems to conduct strikes deep inside Russian territory. And when I see this news, I was wondering what is going on. Why Kyiv regime and the Western media outlets are simultaneously, in unison, are pushing this narrative that Zelensky and his associates have no permission from the Washington or other major capitals in the West to use Western weapons to strike deep inside Russian territory, when they are already doing this. Kyiv regime is using Western weapons to strike deep inside Russian territory, basically since they start receiving these Western weapons systems. And one may argue that, well, in this particular case, Washington is prohibiting, or London or Brussels prohibiting, headquarters of the NATO, prohibiting Kyiv regime to use Western weapons to strike in undisputed territories of the Russian Federation, because West in general is not recognizing Crimea, Kherson, Zaporozhye regions, Lugansk and Donetsk People's Republic as part of Russia. Well, this argument is not really working, because just yesterday I reported that Kyiv regime used more than 100 drones to conduct long-range strikes on Russian territory, not just in Crimea direction, but also in the direction of Belgorod region, Kursk region, and the other regions that are, I mean, no one is in Washington or London or Brussels are disputing that Kursk and Belgorod region, or Krasnodar region, by the way, are part of Russia proper. They might not recognizing for now that Crimea is part of Russia. But they clearly are recognizing that Krasnodar is Russia, isn't it? So therefore, this argument is not really working. It's not working. We all know that Kiev regime is actively using MLRS systems that they receive from the NATO member states to conduct strikes on Belgorod, including checkmate this vampire MLRS systems. It's just factual, isn't it? And therefore, because it's factual, I was thinking, what is going on? Why they are pushing this narrative that the Kiev regime has no permission from Western capitals to use these Western weapons to strike deep inside Russian territory? And the only explanation I have is that, Kiev, probably under orders of the very same Washington and London, pushing this narrative now, and then Western media is supporting Zelensky to push this narrative because they want to create some sort of safety cushion for Western ruling class, or plausible deniability, to reinforce their plausible deniability element, because especially now when we all know that just about a few days ago, ambassador of United Kingdom was summoned by Russian Foreign Ministry, ambassador of France, and they were given strong warnings that if Western weapon systems are used to strike on Russian territory, then Russia will retaliate against their assets, not just in Ukraine, but outside Ukraine also. And maybe after this warning, Western, major capitals in the West, in this anti-Russian coalition in the West, are trying to reinforce their plausible deniability this way by pushing this narrative. That's possibility, I guess. In any case, I'm afraid it's only a matter of time, and one should always keep in mind that these long-range weapon systems that Kiev regime is receiving, by the way, is operated by Western military personnel, those missiles and drones, and those operations to strike deep inside Russian territory are prepared and conducted by under strict control of their Western military personnel and their intelligence officers. This is an open secret, isn't it? So let's continue. How long is this update? 32 minutes. Okay, I will share with you this news, and rest of it we'll go through, or at least few more news. Okay, and rest of their update will be on my Patreon. RT is reporting that Zelensky details Ukraine's weapons demands. Ukraine requires more air defense systems and warplanes from the Western backers in order to achieve parity with Russia. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky has stated Moscow has their upper hand in the battle for the skies. Zelensky acknowledged during an interview with the AFP on Friday. I believe that today we have about 25% of what we need to defend Ukraine. I'm talking about air defense, Zelensky stated. As for warplanes, Kiev should be provided with between 120 to 130 modern aircraft, so that Russia does not have air superiority, the Ukrainian leader noticed. So yes, they want not just air defense systems, but they are demanding, by the way, Zelensky is demanding not just air defense systems, but also some 120 to 130 fighter jets. In total, we need this fleet of F-16s in the number I am talking about in order to have a parity, Zelensky claims. So yes, I don't know about 120 or 130 F-16s, but according to statements that we are receiving from the Western officials, first batch of F-16 should appear in Ukraine at any time at this point, or in the beginning of the June, maybe. And when it comes to air defense systems, Washington is promising some Patriots. Germany promised Patriot battery, and possibly Irish-T will be transferred there. by Germany to Kiev regime. Some other NATO member states will probably also come up with some weapons, some additional weapons to further prolong this proxy war against Russia that Western ruling class is waging. So let's see. RIA Novosti is reporting that Zelensky signed a law about this new law about mobilization, which is in force from today, by the way. And if before now situation in Ukraine was dire for people that wanted to avoid forceful mobilization, then from now on they're gonna end up in hell, because of course Kiev regime will further intensify this hunting and kidnapping, hunting on the people and their kidnappings, to then send them to the line of contact and sacrifice. If earlier no younger than 27-year-old males were mobilized, now from 25 year, everybody from 25 year will be kidnapped and forcefully mobilized. And also Kiev regime plans to forcefully mobilize some tens of thousands of criminals from the jails. If you remember, Kiev regime and Western so-called elites were making big buzz about PMC Wagner recruiting its fighters in some prisons in Russia. And now look what they are doing. And by the way, PMC Wagner was one story. They knew how to handle situation when it comes to work with the prisoners. They were not taking any prisoners, anyone from the prisons. But Kiev regime most likely will forcefully mobilize just about everybody in their prisons in Ukraine that can carry weapons. Let's see. This move may end up being more damaging to Kiev regime. This forceful mobilization of the criminals in the Ukrainian jails. Anyways, let's continue. RT is reporting that Moscow is giving additional warnings to the collective West, saying that West is playing with the fire. The West only risks further escalation by arming and encouraging Kiev to strike Russian territory, the Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said on Friday. The warning comes as Ukrainian strikes against Russian cities intensify on the backdrop of Kiev losing ground in the Kharkov region. The profile of the American and British handlers of the Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky regime is clearly visible behind these barbaric attacks, Zakharova told reporters. They are not only providing longer-range missiles and heavy weapons, but are giving a green light to their use against Russia. Once again, we would like to unequivocally warn Washington, London, Brussels, and other Western capitals, as well as Kiev, which is under their control, that they are playing with fire. Russia will not leave such encroachments on its territory unanswered, the spokeswoman stressed. And if we take into account that just recently some serious warnings was given to by Moscow to ambassador of the UK and France, who knows, maybe in upcoming days or weeks we will see some retaliatory measures from Russian side against assets of some NATO member states, not just in Ukraine but also outside of Ukraine. Who knows? And dear friends, I will end the first part of today's update with this news. Medvedev, former president of Russian Federation and current deputy chairman of the Security Council, stated that because NATO member states are providing Kiev regime with the weapon systems that have longer and longer range, then Moscow most likely will be forced to move buffer zone towards a border with Poland, or maybe even inside the Poland. So once again, strong words from Medvedev. I don't know about inside the Poland, but if West will continue escalation, maybe Moscow will you know, maybe Moscow will reconsider its views about Western Ukraine, and maybe Moscow will not allow Western military personnel to be deployed in the Western Ukraine. Earlier there was some indicators that Moscow might be not against if during the process of disintegration of Ukraine, western parts of Ukraine will be claimed by its neighbors, its western neighbors, and Poland will claim territories that used to be part of Poland. Hungary will do the same, and Romania. But things may change, and this statement of Medvedev may be indicator of that. I don't know. Quite strong statements from Medvedev, high-ranking Russian official. And well, this is it when it comes to, it's already 40 minutes still, by the way, and I have plenty of news to report in a second part, which will be available on my Patreon page today. I will end this update now, and I will straight away continue recording second part. So yes, this is it for now. Hopefully you will find this update interesting, informative and useful, and if so, please consider to subscribe to my Patreon page if you want to see second parts of my updates also, and some additional extra content. And I mean, you can also support my work if you want to through PayPal or by subscribing to my or by Boosty, by the way. And you can subscribe on Boosty also. It does give you such option. Anyways, this is it for now. Have a great day and take care.